There was a lot of flack about it, especially the opening, the opening, in the Don's office where, the whole idea is you start in this black hole with all this underbelly going on.
I believe in America. America has made my fortune. And I raised my daughter in the American fashion. I gave her freedom, but I taught her never to dishonor her family.
Well, you just have to worship Gordon Willis for his absolute daring in what he was trying to achieve, that nobody would take the picture away from him later and brighten it up.
They say of Gordon Willis that he ice skates on the emulsion, meaning he's just always there in the total danger zone where it will all fall apart. His blacks are so black, and the subtleties he works with as an artist are so difficult. The success of the picture was such that they made many, many, many more prints than anyone expected. And the irony was that it was greatly distressed and the negative was destroyed.
When Paramount purchased DreamWorks, I got a very nice congratulatory letter from Francis, who went on to say, now that you're at Paramount, do you think you could do something about the sorry state the negative is in on the first two Godfathers, and perhaps the third one as well? So my first official business, having just joined the Viacom family, was to call the head of Paramount, Brad Gray, share the Francis letter with Brad, and ask Brad would he write a check, which a sizable check, to restore the first two Godfathers, and Brad, without blinking, said yes.
Printing film is really a contact sport. When you're constantly running an original negative, coming into contact with printing stock, running through equipment with sprockets, going into sprocket holes, moving the film along, it simply wears out. The true restoration ethic is one of really starting at the foundation. You do a worldwide search for film elements, and you start working with those elements to attempt to create a representation of the film as it originally looked.
We actually went around private collectors, Academy, what Paramount had in their vaults, and cobbled together a print of what we thought was the best looking print put together. And we made that the hero print. We took that print, Alan and Bob Herring went to Boston, showed the print to Gordy, talked about the movie, went through it, made notes, and basically got their feet wet with Gordy's vision and what Gordy's intentions were when he shot it.
He actually began a style. For decades, the ethic was to create a fully exposed negative. If you want it darker, you print it down. If you want it brighter, you don't print it down. But what Gordon did was to create a negative that no one could mess with. There's nothing in the blacks. There is no exposure in the negative on the blacks. There's only one way to print The Godfather, and that is dark. He shot it normally, and what we Willisize it, to make it warmer, give it a bit of red. The actual film, if you look at the original negative and the scanned scenes, is photographed with totally normal color. The look of The Godfather, beyond the exposures, was really created in the laboratory with color timing, and it's very precise color timing. Mr. Willis's general comment is that it's 4-point yellow, 1-point red, across the board for all three films.
It was certainly one of those things where the very, very critical thing of the color, that golden color that you remember, is not too yellow and it's not too pink, and it just has that certain tone.
There are many people that remember the entire film as being dark. Well, the entire film isn't dark. You begin the film in The Godfather's study, which is exceedingly dark, and then go to an outside scene, which was photographed by Mr. Willis to take on the appearance of old Anscochrome, which appears to have blown out whites and overexposed.
I had a strong idea about what it should visually, how it should be glued together. I grew up in New York, and I grew up in the 30s and 40s there, and I thought, this thing should be this kind of brassy yellow. And somebody said, why? I said, I don't know. I said, I feel that it's the appropriate patina for the movie.
I remember when I saw the first dailies, and I saw the first day being Michael and Kay coming out from Christmas shopping from Best Department Store. It had a kind of beginning of some snow, but there was a gold look that somehow I associated with the 40s, maybe because it looked like home movies or something, but it was very definitely something that Gordon had done, and I remember thanking him for it after the first day.
Now, what do you want for Christmas?
Me? Oh, just you.
We're pretty sure from the get-go that we were never going to do this process optically. I think that time has passed, and so the decision was then made is you were going to scan this. And so then the question was, how would you accomplish that? And that was the greatest concern when we started, is no one wanted to call anyone, neither at the studio or a filmmaker, and say, hey, we've had a little bit of a problem here. We've kind of destroyed 30 feet of the original negative. So you look at the negative, you evaluate the condition of the negative, and we went to a place called Protec, a Kodak-owned facility. They literally went through the negative foot by foot. All the physical, architectural crevices of the movie were all inspected. All the splices were looked at to make sure it would hold together.
Okay, we've come to another splice, and this one also has been reinforced. A little bit of ferrotyping.
So once it became that the physical structure of the film could go through some kind of machine, at that point you take a leap of faith, and you put up the first reel, and you close your eyes, and you make a wish, and you kind of pray, and we got very lucky on this show.
Because the film was designed to create negatives that were very thin, which there was hardly any emulsion, going to dupes really created a problem. If we're unable to use parts of the original negative, we have to go to a dupe. A dupe is printed from black and white separation masters, which are protection elements. Color negative fades, but black and white will last as long as the base of the film survives. Black and white separation masters are extracted from the original negative and are created by using red, green, and blue filters to basically split the color of the film down into 3 channels, 3 records, with one piece of film carrying each of the 3 colors, red, green, blue. And then by using filters again, you can recombine them to make a dupe printing negative. But what happens in a film like The Godfather is that you have such subtle transitions in the blacks that are almost not there. Once you start duping it, everything starts to clot up. The grain is heightened, the contrast is raised, there's a slight murky look to it. It's like making a Xerox of a Xerox of a Xerox. The MPI facility, Motion Picture Imaging, which is part of the Warner lot, is one of the few facilities in the world that can give you a 4K image from start to finish.
When you hear resolution as K, they're referring to the number of individual pixels that are across a 35mm frame. And K is, from computer terms, is 1024, 1024. 4K is 4 times that, which is 4096. So a 4K image means across a frame of film, you have 4096 individual pixels or individual dots that make up one line of an image.
A TV screen is approximately 640 by 480. So a 4K image, you're actually going 40 times the resolving power. Now film is somewhere, and no one really knows. Scientists have argued about it. It's somewhere around 4K, 5K for a 35mm 4 per frame.
That gives you 3,112 lines of 4,096 pixels.
Resolution is not necessarily sharpness, because within the frame, a director of photography can have certain things in the foreground or background out of focus, softer focus. So it's not sharpness of elements within the frame. It's the ability to capture whatever information is on that frame as photographed and harvest it in its entirety, manipulate the image, and get it back to film.
To get all the information, all the data off the film into the data world is a challenge. We use the Spirit 4K because you can see how gentle it is on the film. It's an older film, so we obviously didn't want to take any risks and put it in any kind of jeopardy.
After the film is scanned to the file system, it comes to us on 4K data files, and we go virtually frame by frame through the film.
This room is a DI suite, or digital intermediate suite. And what happens here is that we take high-resolution images that have been scanned, and we do color correction, and I hate to use the word manipulation, but at times manipulate it so that we can make it become what the client had in mind.
You certainly have artistic freedoms here, and you certainly have a vision that was started, and you don't want to really bastardize that. And unfortunately now, I mean, you want to make Mr. Brando's eyes brown, green, orange. You can do all this, and just because you can do it doesn't necessarily make it a great idea. Certainly a director spends a lot of time making the movie, and the ability to go into a bay and totally change the look of something is a little nerve-wracking.
One of the interesting things that you find out when you're doing a restoration is the history of a project. And I was going through a couple of prints, and one of the things that we noticed was that the assassination sequence in the Italian restaurant was filled with a myriad of different types of dupes. And it just really looked ugly. And fortunately, I had been in touch with Mr. Willis. I called him and asked him if he remembered anything about it.
They're used to this certain kind of sloppy flexibility they have in laboratories to do certain things, and the laboratories were much better then, believe me.
It seems that the sequence was shot over 2 nights, and they pushed it a stop or 2 stops because it was very underexposed. And the second night, the laboratory forgot to push it. The dailies came back and they were extremely thin, and the entire second half of the sequence was sent back to the West Coast, and it was fixed. Well, here we are, we're 35 years later, and we're able to capture so much more of that underexposed negative. One of the really interesting things that you'll find, I've seen this, other archivists have seen it, it goes back to the classical actors of the silent era, where Lillian Gish would act with an eye movement or moving a muscle in her cheek. I mean, down to that level, that's what Al Pacino does. You can see it now, but you really couldn't fully see it in a dupe of a dupe of a dupe.
When all of that color correction has been done, and then it has been decided that that's it, it goes to film. Our intention is to make this the master of each picture, and that we can in turn make it in any format that is needed.
Well, this is the Godfather on RCA Select Division. It's just a record. It's like it was a movie on a LP record. I don't know how they thought that was going to work.
One of the other problems that we have with home video is that through the last 25 years, where we started with VHS or Beta, went to Laserdisc and regular standard def, now high-def DVD, the viewing environment has changed. People were originally watching these on a 15-inch or a 20-inch or a 27-inch TV set that had a very low resolution.
Until recently, it's been pretty impossible to really transfer a motion picture such as The Godfather, which has incredible latitude between light and dark, to, you know, a VHS or even a television screen. So that when I saw it at the 25th anniversary, I thought, well, maybe it's not as good as it was, but I don't remember what it looked like. And there are not many people alive who have seen it in a theater or who remember how beautiful the photography and the prints were, and myself included. It's sort of like looking at your child growing up. I hadn't noticed how it was different from the original Godfather. And recently now, the last 4 or 5 years, the electronic image is starting to improve to the point where you really at home can enjoy a film with the quality and the latitude and the photographic excellence that the original films may have had.
The trick, the exercise, is to come up with a way to reproduce the look of the original as well as can possibly be done. And again, this could not have been done without digital technology.
Come here. It's my friend Carlo Rizzi. It's my brother Fredo. Oh, you know Fredo, don't you? Here's my stepbrother Tom. That's his girl Teresa. This cute little thing over here is my sister Connie. I was telling you.
One of the greatest moments of my career is when we showed this to Francis. And I was nervous, and Walter Murch came along, and I go, it's either going to go very well today or it's not. And thank God it went very well that day. And I think Francis was entirely happy with what he saw.
I was astonished with how beautiful it was, how rich the photography was. I just thought, my God, it's much more beautiful looking than I had ever remembered. And I was very, very pleased with the efforts they made and realized how important it was that they did this restoration.